Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Kirby Smart, the Georgia Bulldogs, adding another very intriguing defensive lineman to the 2025 class and four-star defensive lineman Christian Garrett from the state of Georgia. A very exciting film study that Christian Garrett was. This is a very athletic, big functional body at 6'3" and a half, 285 pounds. You're not going to find many defensive linemen that carry the weight as well as Christian Garrett. And you see that show up on the field. I mean, moves laterally exceptionally well. Another thing that really stands out to me about Christian Garrett, I mean, disengages from blocks, uses his hands at a really high level. That's not something you see a ton of from the highest of high caliber defensive linemen at the high school ranks, because they are just relying on that kind of raw athleticism to beat up on offensive linemen. Christian Garrett, you like to see him use his hands, get off blocks, make plays at or behind the line of scrimmage. A guy that you probably want to see him play a little bit more physically imposing going into his senior year, but some traits that you are certainly betting on if you're Kirby Smart in this Georgia program. You look at the long success Georgia has had on the defensive side of the football. It starts with getting depth and quality guys on the defensive line. Christian Garrett certainly going to be one of those guys. You look at Georgia, why they were not a program that needed to get desperate on the defensive line. It's because they recruit these kids out of high school, fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the Georgia fans. It's about to get very busy for the Bulldogs on the recruiting trail. Can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into Christian Garrett. And again, I think where you want to start is the athleticism. At 6'3" and a half, 285 pounds, you are going to see him move laterally on the defensive line exceptionally well. This is a very active defender on the defensive line. You kind of see two different types of defensive linemen. You kind of have those guys that are going to eat up double teams and kind of win at the point of attack, let linebackers flow downhill. And then you're going to see guys like Christian Garrett, who are more of your disruptors, guys that get behind the line of scrimmage, are going to be extremely active along the line of scrimmage. That's probably the bucket that I would put Christian Garrett under. And you get into the film, and this is going to be his sophomore year film. And so you get a sense of like how polished this kid is as a defensive lineman at the varsity level as a sophomore. Works from a variety of different spots on the defensive line. That's something that I do like with the versatility that he brings. Head up on the left guard right now, yet plays a little bit high. You would like to see him come off the line of scrimmage with a little bit more physicality. But again, this is his sophomore year film. So you're expecting to see that take a jump as he gets his junior and senior year in. But really good at getting off blocks, disengaging, making his plays. Again, really, really active and athletic when it comes to finding ball carriers. This is a really good piece of film too. Again, using his hands really well, finding the ball carrier in the backfield, powerful hands. You see the first rep and say you want to see more of these kind of reps for Christian Garrett, where he's really physically imposing on offensive linemen, getting behind the line of scrimmage, making plays. A little bit of inconsistency, which kind of makes sense when you're kind of taking into account that this is the sophomore year film. Really, really good play here using his hands. This is kind of textbook here, benching this lineman out, put him in the dirt, and then getting in, being athletic, going and finding the ball carrier. You go back and, again, uses his hands exceptionally well to disengage from offensive linemen. It's just something that you don't always see from these high-caliber defensive linemen. Christian Garrett, I mean, puts that on the film, and you see the frame at 6'3" and a half. I mean, you can easily get him up to 300 pounds. Again, really, really athletic, really good at getting off blocks. You see a lot of teams want to attack these big defensive linemen in those stretch zone schemes because they can't be athletic enough to run the line of scrimmage. Christian Garrett can certainly do that. Again, athletic, pursuing from the backside, making plays. I think this kid can be a game wrecker for Georgia. Now, is he going to be a guy that is going to be a big-time contributor year one, year two? I probably wouldn't bet my money, but getting into year three, year four, I think this is a guy that's where you're going to start to see Christian Garrett break out as a Georgia Bulldog. And you can't blame this kid, a guy that has a ton of traits. Where do you want to go play your collegiate football for the Georgia Bulldogs? Again, a really good example of just getting off blocks. Again, you want to see him be a little bit more physically imposing at the point of attack, but when it comes to disengaging, getting off blockers, that's where he really does excel. You take a look at what Georgia's doing in the 2025 class, and it's no surprise. They are now a top 10 class in the country, only 10 commitments in the fold right now. We fully expect Georgia to be a top 5 recruit, really top 2, top 3 class in the country. You start scrolling down and say, yeah, they're getting it done in the front 7, right? Obviously, we talked about Zayden Walker earlier this week, but you start scrolling down and say, all right, Stephon Shivers, a guy from Tennessee that is much more of that two-gapper at 6'3.5", 355 pounds. You're getting some nice versatility and kind of guys that balance each other out on the defensive line. Shivers going to be a guy that is eating up double teams, letting guys like CJ Allen or Zayden Walker work downhill, play clean, and then you have a guy in Christian Garrett who I think is going to be a little bit more of that game wrecker, a guy that can penetrate, give you some juice from the pass rush, and create some of those negative plays. That is kind of how you want that defensive line to look if you're Kirby Smart, this Georgia program. It's no secret why Georgia's the number 1 team in the country heading into 2024. It's no secret why they have been the premier program in college football. It's because they recruit the line of scrimmage. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys late Sunday night. Wasn't going to miss an opportunity to talk with Georgia Bulldogs on the recruiting trail. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to you all later. Peace.